Okay, so now we're recording. Okay, so 15.1. Let me just redo this one real quick. We just have to fix the 3 rules. I don't know why mine did not save. But down here at the bottom, it reminds you how the formatting is. You should have a blank line between each rule. You should have your selector, then a space, then a curly brace. Then the ending closing brace should be on a line all by itself and aligned. There's my space after my selector. My property goes to the next line. Oh, I forgot a space up there. A space after the colon. I think I'm also missing semicolon. So there should be a semicolon at the end of every property value. Okay, so I've got my selector, space, curly brace, my property, colon, a space, my property value, semicolon, and then my curly brace on the next line. And then again, a blank line between all of them. So let's look. Everything looks good. Okay, so I can check that. It should say it's correct, and we'll go on to the next one. Okay, so this is where everybody else probably is. All right, so the lesson here talks more about CSS syntax, how you use the single quotes, how you use the double quotes, and how you use the semicolon. So it says the 2 CSS rules on lines 4 to 12 are valid CSS code. So 4 to 12, okay, so all of this, it says that it's valid, but the layout and formatting breaks a few Google style guides. So, I mean, it would run. You can look over there on the example. We've got our color and everything the way it's supposed to. But the formatting rules that it's breaking, it says font names that have a space in them should be wrapped in single quotes. So see how Times New Roman, and I guess that's pronounced Andel Mono, those should have single quotes, not double quotes, okay? Each CSS property should end with a semicolon. So at the end of every property, like there, it's missing a semicolon, there, it's missing a semicolon. And multiple selectors in one rule should be written on one line each. So here, they've got H1, comma, H2. Although it works, it breaks the formatting style guides, okay? So what I believe our task is going to be is to go and fix all of those rules, okay? And make sure that the Google style guide is being followed, okay? All right, so number 1 says fix the HTML CSS rule. So if we go over here to my HTML, and lots of times when I have it large and when I click and try to do something, sometimes it goes haywire. So let's see. So the first thing I want to do is this Times New Roman. Oh, it's going to actually let me do it. I'm going to change those double quotes to a single quote. Okay. And then I don't see anything wrong on the rest of the line. Line 7 doesn't end with a semicolon. So I'm going to add that and fix that one. Okay, so that's number 1, fix the HTML rule. Does anybody that's doing this with me, do you see anything else wrong? Did I miss anything? Okay, I just changed the double quotes around Times New Roman to single quotes, and there was no semicolon on at the end of line 7, so I added that. So I think I'm through with that one. Okay, we'll see in a minute when I check it. All right, number 2, fix the H1 and H2 rule. So let's look at this rule, okay? Now, I got a couple things wrong here. First thing that I see is the H1 and the H2 selectors are on the same line. All right, so I'm going to, whoops, my cursor's in the wrong place. Well, let's Control Z and get that back. There we go. Okay. Love Control Z. If you don't use that a lot, that undoes things, okay? All right, so my H1 and my H2, so I'm going to put my cursor right near my H2. Now I'm going to press enter to get that on the next line. So I fixed that part. So let's look and see what's in the middle of these styles. That's actually 2 rules That's a rule for the color, the text color, and a rule for the font family. It would work if you put them on both on one line, but it's very hard to troubleshoot. So let's get those on separate lines. Okay, so now I've got my property color, colon, space, my value, semicolon. Here, got two problems here. That Andale mono, that should be single quotes. And at the very end, the sans serif is missing what? Missing a semicolon. Okay, so we're going to get that put in there. Okay, so I got a blank line between the two rules. Everything else looks good. I think I'm through. So I'm going to click the check. And it tells me that 15.2 is completed. Anybody need me to stay here for a second? Okay, there's the two rules, and that's the way they should be formatted. All right, got a hand up, so I'm going to wait for a second. Is yours saying that it's wrong, Brenda Grace? Okay, let me pause. Zoom recording. Okay, so I've already checked mine, so we're going to move on to 15.3. Everybody else good? All right. 15.3, properties in alphabetical order. Now, I've tried to do this. I've tried to do it because I knew that we were going to get to a lesson where they say, okay, everything needs to be in alphabetical order. So I've tried to help you guys kind of remember this rule or this style guide all along the way. So it says the Google Style Guide also says to put property names in alphabetical order. This makes code easier to read when there are many properties in every rule. Fix the CSS code in the editor to follow this guideline. So it says fix the first rule, which is our HTML, and then fix the second rule. So all we're going to do here is we're going to alphabetize our property names. Okay. So let me make this larger. Okay, now our property names are what's at the very beginning. Okay, so let's see. We got background color, so we know that should be first. Whoops, moved it to the wrong place. Now this is kind of easier for me to do with a mouse. I'm just clicking on them and dragging them around. Okay, it's a little bit more tedious using the little touchpad on your laptop. So A, B, then we need C. The color would come next. This is what I'm saying whenever I have it really large. And then font family comes before font size. So that's all we got to do on that one. Okay, so background color should be first. Then color. Then font family, then font size. Okay, any questions about that one? That's rule 1. And then we're going to do the same thing down here in rule 2. Our H1 and our H2, we just need to move those two around. Whoops. So color should be first, and font family should be second. And that's it. That's all we got to do for that one. It's just alphabetize our property names. And if you do that as you're building the rule, like if you put in your first one, then when you're ready to put in a second rule, just think about where it should go alphabetically. And you don't have to change them all at the end. Okay. All right, let's check this one. And it tells me that 15.3 is complete. Anybody need another second on this one? Okay, all right, I'll wait just a minute. I'll make them large again just to make sure. All we're doing is alphabetizing our properties in the rule. So there's B and then C. Font family comes before font size, and then down here, color comes before font family. And then once you get those alphabetized, then click check, and you're through with 15.3. you good? Okay. All right, anybody else need another minute? Okay, smiling. All right, let me go. Okay, all right, so we're all good with 15.3. So let's click next and go to 15.4. All right, 15.4, unbold headings. The headings by just default, anytime you use H1 to H6, they're going to be in bold font. If you wanted to change that, you could use a property called font weight. It says in this task, we would take a break from the Google Style Guide. The CSS font weight property is used to make text bold or not bold. Headings are bold by default. On line 13, the bold is removed from the H1 heading by setting the font weight property to normal. Thank you so much. This makes the impact font easier to read, because impact, one of the reasons I didn't choose that when we could choose any font we wanted to, because it's kind of tight together, it's thick, some of the letters kind of bleed into each other, so I didn't really like that. But if we go and change the impact font to normal instead of bold, then like it says here, it's easier to read. Okay, so let's look at that line. It said line 13. So right here, okay, on line 13, I'll make this a little bit larger so you guys can see it. Okay, like I said a while ago, this is our main heading, H1. By default, it's really bold. But if you want to change that, go add a property that says font weight and then normal, and it's not bold. Okay, but the reverse of that is if you want to make something bold that's not bold. Does it tell us how to do that yet? Yeah. So if I've got something like, let's say there's a word, which we've learned to use strong, but strong is like inline text. You can add font weight with a value of bold, and it will make it bold. Okay, like I say, we learned strong to do it, but that's inline coding. Font weight property is CSS coding. Okay, all right, so it says for the CSS rule on lines 4 through 8. Okay, so that's this one up here. Okay, our HTML. It says add a font weight property with a value of bold. Okay, so font weight. So think about where that's going to go alphabetically, because we just put all of these properties into alphabetical order. So I'm going to go here. Font weight would be my very last line, because, well, actually no, because they've got font size above font family, so they don't even have it in the right order. But I'm going to put it in the right order. Font weight should be at the very bottom, and then my colon, and then bold, and then my semicolon. So let me make this large again. Okay, and we're on 15.4. Those of you that came in, we've already gone through 15.1 through 15.3. We're doing 15.4, but I'll have this video in the instructions pretty soon. Okay, all right, so all we did, we went to our HTML rule, and at the very bottom, I added font weight with the property of bold. So everything on this page is now going to be bold. So if we look over here, you'll see everything is bold. Before, just our headings were bold, but now everything else is bold. Okay, so that's one line of code. That's all you've got to do for 15.4. So let me make this a little bit larger. Okay, so all I did was go down here on line 8, and I just added in a property, font weight, and then the value is bold. Make sure you got your syntax right. Make sure you got your semicolon after weight, and colon after weight, semicolon after bold. Okay. All right, we're going to check this. And it's, whoops, it says 15.4 is complete. This is everybody's work. Okay, let me go back there and look. Pause. Okay, so that was 14.4. Let's hit next. We're going to do the last one in this section. All right, 15.5. The Google Style Guide says to use a shorthand property to set the values of related CSS properties in a single line. Okay. The three properties on lines 12, 13, and 14 can be replaced with a font shorthand property. Now, I will tell you, it is my humble opinion, I don't necessarily like shorthand. If it's 5 rules that are in the font, you know, categories, I would have font size, font family, font weight. There's more. I like having them on separate lines. But the Google Style Guide says if you've got multiple properties that could go into one line, it wants us to use CSS shorthand and put them together. So let's take a look over here, okay?
Miss Thompson,
Yes, ma'am.
you don't have Trey Craven in class today.
He's absent.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So the three properties on lines 12 to 14 can be replaced with the font shorthand property of just using font, okay? Then we're taking the values, the property values, and we're putting them right beside of the word font. Now, you just have to remember the correct order, okay? So font weight would go first, then font size, and then font family. This lesson is a good lesson to remember where it is, because I think there's a quiz that you're going to take later on, either today or finishing it tomorrow, that you have to put some of these lines of code in shorthand property. So if you forget how to do it when you're taking the quiz, just, you know, exit out of the quiz, come back to this line, and it tells you. So if you look up here at the example, let me make it larger, okay? So after the word font, the first thing is the font weight, okay? It's going to be either normal or bold. The next one, and there's no comma between them, okay? The next property is font size. So up there, I've got 28 pixels. And then the third one is font family, okay? So it's got the font family there. No commas, there's only a space to separate these three properties. So font weight first, font size second, font family third, okay? All right, so number 1 is telling us use the font shorthand property to combine the font related properties in the HTML rule, then the H1, then the H2, okay? All right, and it gives us something special to do in the H2. All right, this is the way that I do it, and I would probably do it the same way if I were you, okay? So let me go over here. I'm going to create a new line. I'm not going to get rid of those 3 lines first, because if I delete those 3 lines, then I'm not going to remember what the font weight was, what the font size was, what the font family was, okay? So I'm going to leave those 3 lines, and then once I do the shorthand version, then I will get rid of those 3 lines. I was making sure that I have the recording going, okay? So I'm going to add the word font and my colon. Now to do the shorthand, what comes first? Of those 3 properties, which one comes first? Font what? Did we forget already? Let's go back over here and look, okay? The values must be put in the correct order. IE stands for, that is, font weight, then the font size, then the font family. Okay, so which one did it say put in first? Weight, okay? And if we look down here on line 9, what is our weight? Our weight is bold. That's the reason I don't get rid of those 3 lines until after we do our shorthand, okay? Remember, there's no comma, just a space. Alea, you working on these with me? Okay. All right, second one is what? Which one comes next, size or family? Size. All right, our size, we can look down here on line 7, 16 pixels. We press a space, not a comma. And then our last one is our font family. Now, I don't want to have to retype all this. I don't mind retyping bold, and I don't mind retyping 16 pixels, but I don't want to retype all this, especially since I got to remember, you know, single quotes and all of that stuff. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to paste that. Okay, so this, line 6, that's my shorthand for lines 7, 8, and 9. So now that I've got my shorthand on here, I can get rid of lines 7, 8, 9. But you see where everything comes from. Instead of having font size, font family, font weight, I just have font. And then it's followed by the properties in the correct order. First is our weight. Second is our size. Third is our font family. Okay, so now I can get rid of those 3 lines. And I just have my shorthand. Okay. Any questions on that one? We got 2 more to do, but that's the first one. Usually once we kind of do one together, then students can go and do the second and third one on their own, but I'll do it with you. Okay, any questions about that? Instead of using font weight, font size, font family, we just use font and a colon, and then we put those 3 properties in the correct order. Okay, all right, so let's go look at our second rule, our H1. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to get myself, I'm trying to move this up a little bit. I move it down there. That doesn't work. That's what I want. I wanted the whole H1 where you guys could see it. And then you make it really large. There we go. Okay. All right. So find your rule for H1. We're going to do the same thing. I've already got my blank line there. Remember, we only use the property font. First is going to be our weight. So that's going to be normal. Second is going to be our font size. That's going to be 28 pixels. And third is going to be our font family. So I'm going to copy that and paste it here. Okay. So this line, line 10, is the shorthand version of what's on lines 11, 12, and 13. That makes sense. Okay. Like I said, I prefer that method. I prefer to do it the long way. Okay, that my brain just likes that long way because everything is spelled out. Okay, some people like the shortcut versions. When I was in college and we were doing coding, like I would work on a program, I would come back to class, I'd be so proud. I would say, oh my gosh, I got 125 lines of code. And the person sitting beside me was like, 125 lines of code, I did it in 50. I'm like, how did you do it in 50? Because they would take all these shortcuts, I would do all the long way. But that's just me. That's the way my brain processes things. So I prefer the long way. So now that I've done the shortcut, I can get rid of the longhand version. Okay. So now we got the HTML rule modified for shorthand. I've got the H1 rule modified for shorthand. So now we just need to do our H2 rule. Okay. Now, our H2 rule only has font family and font size, but our instructions tell us, if you read the instructions, it said for font weight, use bold. Okay, so even though I don't have a font weight listed here, it said use bold. Okay, so again, I know the only property name I have to use is font. The weight is the first one, so I'm going to add bold. The second one is my font size. Hopefully by now it's starting to click. This is just like a mathematical formula. In math class, all the time, you guys have to just memorize formulas, right? Well, this is kind of like that. You're just memorizing the formula for shorthand. Font weight comes first, font size comes second, font family comes third, okay? There's more. Later on, we're doing lesson 16 through 20. There's more shorthand to learn. We'll learn that later. Okay, so my font weight is bold. My font size is 20 pixels. And then here's my font family. And notice that I'm always copying that semicolon, because we have to have that semicolon at the end, okay? So line 14 on mine, this might not be line 14 on yours, but line 14 on my code editor is the font shortcut with the font weight, font size, font family. So since I have those two, these two lines, whoops, since I have the shortcut version, I can get rid of lines 15 and 16. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so this is the way the 3 rules should look. So I'll make this pretty big, pretty large, so you guys can see it. So now you only have 2 lines of code in your HTML rule. You have 1 line of code in your H1 rule and 1 line of code in your H2 rule. I don't know why, sometimes it doesn't let me drag it down. All right, anybody have any questions on that? Let me make sure that's all we were supposed to do, yeah. So let's check this. And it says that 15.5 is complete. I'll make this a little bit larger. Anybody have questions on this? Everybody got this? So everybody's through that's doing this with me. Everybody's through with 15.5. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Whoops. That's not what I meant to do. Okay. I'm going to stop.